That the solution to the end of the world is not to become a frightened tyrant that says, oh my God, the sky is falling. I need all the power now. I need to make these centralized decisions. These centralized decisions are going to affect every single element of your life and your children's life, assuming you get to have children at all. And that's going to bring us towards a more benevolent planet. It's like none of that's true. There's not an apocalypse. You don't get to be a frightened tyrant. We don't need centralized top-down control of absolutely everything we do. And even if we did have all of that, what we would get wouldn't be the positive outcome that everyone who's on that side is touting. What we'd get is the same kind of centralized planning disasters that we've seen play out time and time again over the last 100 years all over the world. This is every single way you cut this is a bad set of solutions. Now, I want to steel man it a little bit. So, you know, the idea that there are too many people on the planet is actually predicated on, you might say data, which is one of the weird things about data, is that if you take a petri dish that's full of a nutritive medium and you put a mold on it, the mold will grow until it eats all the available nutrients and then it will all die. And so that's a kind of limits to growth model. But the world in that model is a encapsulated petri dish, and the biological agents are mindless single-celled organisms. So you might say, well, that's not a great metaphor for human beings, because first of all, human beings aren't mold or viruses or cancers. We're a very strange breed of creature because we can think and we can react and we can modify the environment and we can modify ourselves. And so it isn't obvious at all. People say follow the science. The science is Malthusian. We're all, microorganisms in a petri dish or rats in a colony. We're going to overpopulate till we devour everything. It's like, I don't think so. First of all, why would you use single-celled organisms as the cardinal metaphor for human populations? It's a preposterous biological metaphor. And one of the things the economists have pointed out, as opposed to the biologists who tend to be more Malthusian repeatedly, is, look, you can create your linear models of what's going to happen if. But what you're failing to take into account is the proclivity of people to revolutionarily transform the way they interact with the world and to continually figure out how to do more with less. And there's no indication whatsoever that we've run to the end of that process. Quite the contrary, we'd seem to be getting faster at it all the time. And there's no reason to assume that the limits to growth petri dish model of human catastrophe is the appropriate biological metaphor. That's not justified by science, and 99% of scientists don't believe it. And one of the things that's so interesting, you know this perfectly well, is that economists and biologists have been betting against each other really formally since the mid-60s. And the biologists like, what's his name at Stanford, Paul Ehrlich, who's been screeching since the mid-60s about the fact that we're Malthusian organisms doomed to extinction. He's been wrong in every single one of his predictions, and publicly and massively, and I would say even murderously wrong in some fundamental sense. So he predicted that there would be way too many people on the planet by the year 2000. That was seriously wrong. He predicted that all of the prices of our commodities were going to spike through the roof as everything became more and more scarce, as there became more and more of us. That was 100% wrong. He had a famous bet with Julian Simon, and Simon collected, I think, just after the turn of the millennia, because Simon, the economist, claimed that, no, quite the contrary. As there are more people, there'll be more commodities, there'll be more resources, and the prices will fall. He even offered Ehrlich the opportunity to pick the basket of commodities they would bet on. And Ehrlich got stomped. And what we've seen continually, time and time again, is the economists have been right, which is that there's no limit to human ingenuity. And that also means that if we got food, water, sanitation, opportunity to the billions of people that don't have it, we would produce a few more spectacular hyper geniuses like Elon Musk, let's say, or Norman Borlaug, and God only knows what sort of efficiency they can produce for us. So the idea that we could convert natural resources into human cognitive ability. That seems like a pretty damn good trade from the perspective of economic flourishing and environmental sustainability.
This is the work of literally many hundreds of the world's top economists that I've helped sort of shepherd together, but there are lots and lots of people involved, and likewise with Norman Borlaug. I'm sure that's also true with Elon Musk. And so the fundamental point is, this is about getting everybody on board with this, and that's also why I'm so excited we have this conversation, because I think this is about telling you don't need to be Elon Musk to be on this positive side of history. You need to make sure that you're pitching into this very long battle in order to make the world better. And again, also, sorry, I'm just being the nerd here, right? But of course, nobody's 100% wrong. I get that this was a sort of metaphorical 100%, but it's more, the argument here is to recognize that a lot of biologists, and Julian Simon actually wrote about that, the guy you mentioned that did the bet with Paul Ehrlich, and he said it is very curious how most of the people who think the world is going to end are typically natural scientists. They're typically biologists or biologist inspired. And I think that is because the models that cover those, and it's not just mold, but it's also, fox, rabbit populations that they will sort of interact, and then there's too many rabbits, and then there's too many foxes, and so on. Those are all models of individuals that act without foresight. And it makes sense. That's how 99% of nature is. But we're not that. We actually not only know how to think ahead of us. So that's of course why we're having this conversation. That's why we're worried about things like climate change.